We are live. We're live. We're live, coming to you on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana, as well as streaming across our multiple platforms. We are very grateful for those partnerships that we have, and for Smart Money Culture TV for putting together this amazing network. Our man Fly Mackey has put down a ton of his own money, 7 figures, in order to put together these stations, and we are reaching a lot of people, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and we're reaching a lot of people. So thanks for joining us on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana. Of course, we do stream on my X account, Networks Manager, as well as with Sir David Porter at Sir David Porter on X, and with our other partnerships as well across YouTube and the other different platforms. So a lot going on today. I'll tell you what, it has been a hectic time for me, of course, with the play and everything else. And what I've been doing is napping, because I'm getting home at like 11 o'clock or 11:30, and then sometimes doing calls, like I have an 11 o'clock p.m. call tonight. And then, of course, I'm up at 4:55 in the morning, right? So that is what I have been doing. But this morning I just kept working, and I only have a few more shows left. How's it going out there in Dublin, David?
Yep, pretty well. We're looking forward to everything, all kinds of protests and stuff. I told them I'm American. We're pretty good at the protesting now. So, but we're looking at a great show here today. Super excited. I know you've been staying tuned with all the research, and we're growing. We can see how much we're growing, and smartmoneyculture.tv has been pretty awesome, and we're looking to expand there. So yeah, excited for everything.
Well, that is absolutely correct. And I was just going through some of the stuff going on. There's just a lot, really. We have, of course, Trump is facing this showdown. Really, it is a showdown. It's a showdown that's going to end up in the Supreme Court. Absolutely. You have the Illinois, their court, a judge in Illinois has kicked him off the ballot again. So they already, I thought, ruled that they couldn't take him off the ballot in somewhere else. But now they're saying, oh, no, we're going to take him off. And I think that's going to continue. It's kind of like what I've said. I mean, we have a situation in this country where there's no real rule of law anymore. And part of it is, like I mentioned in the title, one of the reasons is because the central bank has bypassed the White House and has bypassed Congress and has bypassed the Supreme Court. They answer to nobody, and they're actually ruling us. And since we have a situation,
the law system is in the same structure. There's really no fact matters in the local courts, and they can really run over and do whatever they decide. And most of the time, your attorneys aren't even working for you. They're working for the Bar Association. So the only way to handle things, especially when you're looking at some serious stuff, is to bring it up to the Supreme Court and forget about all these other courts that are not going to operate in anybody's real favor unless you're trying to do some bad stuff.
And then you have, I mean, on the one side of the Supreme Court is absolutely stacked. You have, I mean, nothing against the woman. I don't know her at all or anything else. All I know is that Biden came out and said he's going to put his next Supreme Court is going to be black and she's going to be a woman. And then we got her.
That?
Yes.
That's awful, man.
I mean, she could have been the most qualified person. I'm not saying that she's not. I haven't studied it. Okay, but I am saying that she will always, in everybody's mind, be not the best one for the job, because she was hired specifically for being a black woman. I mean, that was what he said. So, so you have her, you have these other ones on there. I mean, there's just you could say they're radical, or you can say whatever you want, but here's the thing, guys. If you think that the Supreme Court is going to save us, then I think you need to go back and you need to have some soul searching and sit down and talk with your brothers and your family and your wife and whoever else, probably brothers and your father and stuff like that, and see, really, is that really something that you're going to hang your hat on? Are you going to hang your family's future on a Hail Mary that the Supreme Court is going to save you? Because I don't think so, guys. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to save us. And it's not that I think that these people are bad people. I don't think they're bad people. I just understand how things work here in Washington. And there's trillions and trillions of dollars on the line, and whenever there's even millions of dollars on the line, I mean, people get shot for 50 grand. People get shot for hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking trillions. Okay, we're talking trillions. You know what I mean? We're talking about guys that are making bombs they're just, they never even see the people that they kill. And they end up killing thousands and thousands. We killed hundreds of thousands, 500,000 people in Iraq. There's more than likely the numbers coming out of the Ukraine and the Russia war. I mean, who in the world knows what you want to believe? One guy's saying, or you have Zelensky saying 30,000. I don't believe that for a second. You have the U.S. saying 70,000. I don't believe that for a second. You have the Russians saying it's 500,000. I don't really believe that. I don't know what to believe. It's probably somewhere in the middle. So if you take 500,000 and 30,000 and you go in the middle of there, okay, so anyway you cut it, hundreds of thousands of people dead, beautiful people, wonderful
and all
people.
the others had to abandon their homes,
and all the others that have abandoned their homes. And then, not to take away from the tens of thousands already that are dead over in Israel or Greater Israel or Gaza or Palestine or whatever the heck you want to call it over there. A mess. And now with the wink, wink, we're not going into Lebanon while they're just bombing every day. And then, of course, just the crown jewel over there, Iran. We've been after Iran. The U.S. administrative state has been after Iran forever. Actually, even the Ayatollah that's there right now is there because the CIA went in there and tried to change the government. And they did. They were successful in changing the government. They just didn't get the one that they wanted. They didn't get the one they wanted, so they got the Ayatollah in there. So, yeah, oil's moving up. That is going to make inflation go up quite a bit as oil moves up. So oil is moving up almost kind of like as we speak, as a matter of fact. So oil is moving up. And what that means is a number of things. One, of course, inflation is going to go up even more. But it means that the dollar is weakening. And so even as we're talking here, 79.22. So this level, this $80 level is a psychological level for everybody. Okay. Once we pass into that and we go over into the $80 a barrel oil, I think we're going to see inflation really start to skyrocket there. I can bring my screen on here and share it as I go because quite a few things going on here. Boom. There we go. So you can see oil here, 79.16, 79.17 active trading. Let's look on the daily chart here. You can see it's sharp. Boom. Okay. Bitcoin, of course, Bitcoin had just a recent pullback, but still up, I think, quite a bit on the day. 61,836. This is registering down 1%, but I think it depends on what hour chart you're looking at. Global Boost was up above 3 cents. Of course, that is the currency that we had a big hand in starting here. Okay, so it is showing down. Bitcoin is showing down 2.5%. It has stalled here at this 63.64 level, 1,000 level. They want to make sure they have everybody buy in, and then they're going to pull back. I mean, we'll see. That's normally the way it works. the ETFs had the biggest day yesterday. Now, what nobody is talking about, what I haven't seen anybody talking about yet, besides us, we talked about it on the morning show, but just a little bit, the Bitcoins that were hacked from Bitfinex. Those coins moved. It was about $1 billion in coins that were hacked from Bitfinex. Now, you would have to imagine that Bitfinex got those coins back. Maybe they got them back after a certain amount of time, because the feds aren't supposed to just hold them, right? If they caught the guys, they're supposed to give them back. I don't know. Those coins did move about 800 million, or in between 800 million and 1 billion moved. And I thought that would make the market jittery, but it didn't. We had the inflow on the ETFs has been really large inflow into these ETFs, a lot of money moving into the space. And that really has to do with not only the interest and the people that are buying in, but also the fact that the US dollar is really set up to they're printing a lot of it. So they're diluting everybody. Rothschild, of course, passed away. I have some interesting things. Dad messaged me. I don't know if he messaged you, David. Dad messaged me the other night. He had an idea on something to do. What's starting to happen is people are starting to wake up to the fact that the money supply and the money being inflated, the US dollar is being inflated, and you actually don't have any control over it. And actually, I just put up on my X account. You can always go over to my X account, and I will have kind of the latest stuff that we're doing. Let me just pin this to the pin there, since that's one we're using now. The Federal Reserve is an independent agency. This is Alan Greenspan. I just posted it. Pretty interesting comments from him.
Well, what is the proper relationship? What should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then such relationships don't frankly matter. And I've had very good relationships with presidents.
What is the proper relationship?
So people are starting to get it. They're starting to understand the situation that we're in. So we have a central bank. We didn't have a central bank before 1913. In 1913, in the dark of the night, they passed the Federal Reserve Act right after the Titanic took down the major opposition. Whether you want to believe that was coordinated or not, I don't know. I wasn't alive. Looks to me like it was probably coordinated. We had a bank crash that was coordinated by J.P. Morgan. It's well known. It was coordinated by J.P. Morgan and his cohorts, the Rothschilds, and all these other ones, right? We know J.P. Morgan. That's pretty much a fact. I won't throw the other ones in there and get myself in trouble. But they were all cohorts on starting the Federal Reserve. And in the dead of the night, they pushed through the Federal Reserve. This was explicitly stopped by our founding fathers. When we started the United States, there was no central bank. You were not allowed. There was a mandate. There was an actual mandate to use gold or silver. And the reason for that was that we wouldn't end up in a situation like this, where the central bank answers to nobody and has total control of the money. And I talk about this a bit, and it's funny because nobody understands. All they hear is that like Biden is going to forgive the student loans. He's going, oh, well, all right. Well, I don't think we should do that, but I mean, whatever, we have no control. Why do you have no control? What do you mean you have no control? It's $136 billion. Where is he going to get the $136 billion? He's going to get it from you. Central bank is going to front the $136 billion, pay off the lenders. The lenders are going to get paid plus interest. Everybody makes money. The Federal Reserve is going to front the $136 billion, and they're also going to make about $4 billion from fronting it, because they're going to attach about a 3% interest. So the banks are going to get paid. The Federal Reserve is going to get paid. Who's going to pay it? Where does the money come from? Well, it comes from you. It comes from you. And you're going to feel it from inflation. That's the scam. That's how it's working. And they're like drunk on this scam now. They like can't stop themselves. We're in a situation where we've been spending about $5 to $6 trillion per year over the last few years. And if we keep on the track that we're going on in 2024, we're going to spend $12 trillion. Inflation will be through absolutely through the roof. And here's the other part of the scam. So in the 2023, they're going to take in about $1.5 trillion in tax money, and they spent $6 trillion. We're going to pay $1.5 trillion to the Federal Reserve in order, and that's just the interest payment on the $34 trillion that we owe the Federal Reserve. Not sustainable at all whatsoever. So all we're doing is spending, the Federal Reserve is fronting the money. We're spending way more money than we actually are taking in, or quote unquote have, that we've given the government. Okay, we're spending way more, and then we're only paying this small percentage to service the debt. We're only paying the interest payment to the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve is like, no problem. We own these people anyway. Basically, we're going to make our money one way or the other. The federal income tax basically is always at least the amount that we have to pay the Federal Reserve for them to front us the money. So as well, if we spend double the amount of money in 2024, guess what? Your tax may be double next year. So, or it will at least be, I mean, if we're at 34 trillion right now and we add 12 trillion to it, okay, then we're at 46 trillion. The interest on that is not going to be 1.5 trillion anymore. It's going to be more like 2 or 3 trillion. You have to do the math. I'm on live television. It's hard to do it sometimes that I'm on live television. I'm actually really good at math. Ask my daughters. So then that means that your tax is also going to go up. The one that you write the money for. And actually, the biggest thing that they did to fake everybody out really is have the withholding on your checks. That withholding, so you don't realize how much you're paying. You don't realize. If you had to pay it at the end of the year, you wouldn't pay it. You wouldn't pay it. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, everybody. I don't care who you fall under. If you had to pay your tax at the end of the year and you saw how much it was, you wouldn't pay it. And so that's why they do it that way. Anyway, guys, I'll tell you what, we are in a big time situation here. Big time. It's not sustainable. And I've been saying it for over a decade that it's not sustainable, but now it's really, really, really not sustainable. This won't continue. This won't continue. It's a big scam. And the central bank, you heard Alan Greenspan say that the silent part out loud himself. They answer to nobody. They answer to nobody. And they're the ones that are fronting us the money. And that was the whole deal. They said, look, guys, let us control. We'll give you whatever money you need. The banks had just crashed, which was coordinated by JP Morgan and cohorts. So they had just crashed the banks. And then they said, look, we're going to give you paper money. We're going to give you whatever money you want. You just let us be the central bank. You don't worry about it. We'll give you whatever money you want. All you have to do is pay us the interest.
It's crazy to think that's the basis of it, and this is why we keep calling it a scam, and it's going to zero. Yeah, it's unreal.
It's unreal. Fractional reserve banking to the largest extent you could ever imagine. You only have to pay 3%. And you have a continuous loan, basically. A continuous loan. As long as you don't cross them and as long as you pay for all the wars. We have been at war since the Federal Reserve started. Since the central bank took over the United States in 1913. Answers to nobody. Prints whatever they want. And doesn't matter who we elect. That's why we can never get anything done. That's why the government never shrinks. That's why people don't get fired. That's why Mayorkas can't get impeached. That's why Trump, who knows if he's going to get in or not? I have no idea. They definitely don't want him in. If he gets in, is he going to be able to get anything done? I don't know. Craziness. Let's play. Should we play the money report from this morning?
Yeah.
Right? Or we could keep going on about the craziness of what's going on. Oil pulled back a little bit as we were talking, by the way. Impact money. Got some good analysis this morning from our main man. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Good morning. Morning, David. Morning, Bruce. Morning, America.
Yes.
And the world.
Oh, interesting day. I mean, really, the amount of money that's floating around. I mean, even in all the markets, really, it is staggering.
Yeah. I mean, we'll look at that in a minute because it's really interesting to see what the drivers are behind it. Just to go back to what you were saying, I think absolutely right. I mean, the student debt, obviously, if they write it off, somebody pays at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, it's always the consumer that pays.
Always.
Government can say, "Oh, we're writing it off," but it's obviously the consumer that pays at the end of the day. There's no doubt whatsoever in any thinking person's mind that that's what's going to happen.
Well, it's pretty interesting because as I said it was like a lot of really smart people. They're like, "Oh my gosh, of course he's right. Like the banks aren't just going to eat $136 billion."
Yeah, they don't want to believe it. I'm sharing my screen again. I hope you can.
I'll add it to the stage. Here we go. All right.
I mean, that pile of figures there is actually looking at the various Bitcoin ETFs, and you can see all the ones: BlackRock, Fidelity, Bitwise, ARK, Invesco, etc., all along to Grayscale, and it's looking at the net inflows, and it's really interesting. Even yesterday, so we can see right from the start, the 11th, when the ETF was approved, and we started pretty well straight away with net inflows, but there were quite a few outflows, which is why we saw there's a bit of a spike at the start, and then we saw a bit of a sell-off in Bitcoin. So we can really see this is correlated, the amount of money coming in and going out of the Bitcoin ETFs, and this is the cumulative figure down on the right. So it's the figures on the right that you really need to take notice of. You can see it's been flooding out of Grayscale all the way along, which it would do. Their fees are much, much higher. People are taking profits from the discount they got in earlier. So it will continue to flow out of Grayscale, and from Grayscale flow into others. But what's really important is, even though you had 125 million outflow yesterday from Grayscale, the net inflow was 576 million, so $500 million net inflow. So this, coming into Bitcoin with such limited supply, is what's driving the price. So it's a real powerful driver. I mean, you've only got, the drivers are supply and demand, and supply is, virtually fixed. There is a small amount of mining to grow the supply a little bit, but the demand is exploding, and that's what's driving the price like crazy. So it's really interesting. I wanted to look at fear and greed today and just see where, what that impact that has, because at the end of the day, the market is all about who's buying, who's selling, and they're driven very much by the fear and the greed in the market. And this is like a cumulative figure, and it's gathered from all sorts of data, but they're using, social media data, and it's really smart the way they gather it. It's not just counting numbers of people who talk about Bitcoin. It's actually now we have NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, so AI effectively, which actually can now understand what people are tweeting and what people are saying on the social media. And they can actually now factor in the meaning of what they're saying into these types of metrics like fear and greed. And there's all sorts of other things they look at as well, volatility and so on. But it's really very interesting information. And right now, we're at a greed reading of 80. That's extreme greed, really, both now and yesterday. Yesterday it was 82, the extreme greed still, until still we're on that reading of extreme greed. And you can see from last month, yes, there was greed there, but it's grown and grown and grown. So it's growing, the amount of greed. This is just quite interesting to have a very quick look at. This is fear and greed over a long period of time for crypto. And just interestingly, I noticed there's obviously peaks and troughs in it. So I wanted to look at that when you compare it with the price of Bitcoin and the fear and greed index, and see if we can draw any conclusions from it, see if there's anything we can learn as traders to help us, empower us to make better trades. So I looked a bit further, and we can see some of the insights here that basically, obviously, when the market's in the doldrums like COVID, we're actually in the extreme fear phase there in the red down here. And when things are going really well, like when there's been a massive pump in price, 5x price increase, we're at extreme greed. And so that's quite interesting. So I thought, well, let's put this together and see if we can understand even more what we can gain from this. So this at the bottom is the fear and greed index, and showing since late 2020, early 2021. And we can see what you really ideally need to do is use a logarithmic chart, I think, against this. If you're looking any longer term than this is okay, back to 2020. But if you go any further back, you do need to use a logarithmic chart so you can actually see the rises in context, really, with the fear and greed. But this is good enough here. And we can basically see that when there's a rise in price, so this was the first rise to 60, just over 60K, 62 or something, back in somewhere early 2021. And we can see that the greed was extreme, at extreme levels, even higher than what it is right now. So that's interesting, because what it's telling me is there's actually scope potentially for greed to rise even more from where we are right now with the price. So potentially we can rise based on this to new all-time highs with Bitcoin. But really interestingly, every time we see a peak, we're seeing a peak in greed, and every time we see a trough, there's basically an extreme of fear. So a price trough, and we see extreme of fear with showing the red here, and it happens every single time, and even with individual waves that have labeled with Elliott wave here. So you see the top of this red wave 1 coincided with this green extreme greed here, and then the top of the blue wave 1 again coinciding with extreme greed. And then the top of wave 3, extreme greed. And then the current top, or maybe somewhere we can extend further, as I said, but there's actually, we're in a position of extreme greed, which is coinciding with most probably a wave 5 in blue, wave 3 in red. So I think it's quite significant that it coincides with the Elliott waves, which obviously are on the peaks and troughs of the market. But this is telling us clearly that when the market is in a position of extreme greed, it's probably not the right time to be jumping into those positions. We need to be jumping into those positions at the time when the market is in a position of extreme fear. So all the low points, and we just follow the fear and greed index, are available online. You can track them. There's lots that we actually produce one at eBay as well. Lots of places you can find this information, but it can really empower you to buy in when the market is in an accumulation phase. These sort of areas, these low points, the market is beginning to accumulate. And this is when the professionals are accumulating, and they know the market's at a low, that there's extreme fear out there. When the market gets to highs like now, everybody's piling in. And that's why we call it greed, because people are piling in because of greed. They've heard Bitcoin has doubled and whatever it's, however much it's gone up. Same with the other cryptos, and people are absolutely piling in, the retail traders. But these are the sorts of times when professional traders will be looking to at least protect profits, even if they continue to ride the rise in the market. They'll be looking to at least protect their profits. So this tells you an awful lot. And I would strongly advise any traders to be aware of fear and greed and factor it in. And we factor it into our metrics at eBay within the ratings that we do. It's very important. It's probably the most important thing you'll ever look at, because all of technical analysis, pretty well all of it, is lagging indicators. It's looking at past price history. But this is actually probably the only leading indicator that you can, virtually one of the only leading, or at least current indicators that there are, that you can really look at a reading currently on a scale and find out that the market is extremely stretched as it is at the moment. And that's showing the price there of 62.8 on Bitcoin. So it's very current, and we're at a position of, if you lined it up here at the extreme greed situation. And you can see very clearly what it is that, what drives the fear and the greed. And this actually is what's behind Elliott wave analysis. Elliott wave analysis is actually behavioral analysis. It's just understanding people's psychology in the market that drives the market. So for example, you can see in a rising wave here, we've been rising for some time. It's just showing the full cycle here. But people, when people are optimistic, obviously they're buying, they get really enthusiastic, and there's exuberance and euphoria. And when there's real euphoria and everyone's saying it can only go one way because nothing can hurt this market right now, it's just going to go parabolic high. Well, it can do for some time, but when you get to those areas of euphoria, that's when you're that green area of extreme greed. And then you might then see the first signs, because you start to see the beginnings of a sell-off at some point. And then people start to get a little bit anxious, but they also come into a situation of denial that, the market's falling, they hold on, but then the fear starts to grip, and then despair and panic and capitulation. Capitulation is basically when you throw the towel in and you sell everything just at the wrong time, when the market's at the bottom, the extreme fear, the red area of the market, and people get discouraged, etc. And then the cycle continues again. As we can see, when it starts to rise, there's a bit of dismay, but then there's hope and a bit of relief, and then optimism, and you get back onto this rising cycle here. So that is the most important thing that drives the markets, because the whole markets are really based on people's psychology, how they feel about the market, buying and selling. Here's the S&P. Again, it's still under pressure. And don't forget, we've got PCE figures out today. So that's the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. And it's personal consumption expenditure. So it's what people are actually spending, and we'll see what those figures are. A high figure would ironically mean that there's probably pressure on inflation. That's probably not good for the market. They're expecting a slightly lower figure. Let's hope that happens and continues to push the markets higher. But there is some concern, and as I say, we hit those two fib levels on the S&P 500. We've fallen a bit from there, although to be fair, it doesn't look impulsive at the moment on the downside. So it could be just winding up for a bigger fall to the downside, but I'm not clear. I don't think the market's clear, but there are some indications that we reached a top there with those two fib levels, and we got this bearish divergence in place. But it could have been just a temporary top. We don't know. This looks corrective to the downside. So right now, it's not quite clear where we're going with the S&P. I think tonight will be very informative when we hear those PCE numbers come out. So here's a further breakdown of the S&P. This is right up to date, really. You can see we've been falling a little bit there, and we had some interesting candles. That was basically a shooting star candlestick there, which indicative of a top, and then we got an engulfing candlestick, bearish candlestick there, almost a harami, not quite, but then a further engulfing candlestick. So at the moment, looking a little bit bearish. I wouldn't be looking to buy this market, but maybe it's dangerous to sell it. So just warning lights, really. Just be cautious. Here's the DXY. This is where we were yesterday. We started to bounce off this line. We actually retested it again today. but higher up as the line increases. This is just a parallel channel, nothing more, but it's containing the price very well. As you can see, it just keeps retesting now. So it looks as though maybe we'll get strong PC figures out tonight that could strengthen the dollar and push dollar higher. But let's see, it all depends on those figures. So I don't like to trade ahead of figures. It's good to see what they are and just see where it's driving the market. But at the moment, we've really respected this support line very well. Right at the start here, number 2 here, number 3 here, number 4 here. So 4 times on the bottom, on the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 times on the top. So it's really highly respected support and resistance there. So obviously it can break, but the tendency is that when these keep getting tested over and over again and keep getting rejected, the price, it becomes a stronger and stronger signal. So that's why the price just bounced off it very, very sharply this morning.
And that's
here's the Bitcoin. And again, we're looking at a final phase. Sorry?
And that's the strength of the US dollar.
That's right. That was the strength of the US dollar. Yeah. So as you know, if the US dollar strengthens, it basically means people might be moving into treasuries and out of risk assets, because treasury is seen as risk-free effectively. Out of risk assets. And if you think about it, if they're if the calls to lower interest rates, in fact, we'll look at that again in a moment. That'll be from yesterday's, but I will look at interest rates and where we're going with that. But here's Bitcoin, and it does look as though potentially we obviously can go higher, but we do have 5 waves from the last wave 4, and it's part of a bigger cycle. But this last wave 4 got wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th wave itself is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we could be near a local top on Bitcoin. I do think it will just be a correction after this, and we'll probably get another push higher. But I think we could get a correction. And look at this candlestick here. You can see it's a doji, which basically means price was pushing higher, 64,000 last night, and then we got a sharp sell-off within about 10 minutes. We got a 10% sell-off in Bitcoin, and that was to do with Coinbase had a bit of a glitch with their exchange. And for a time, a lot of the balances, people's Bitcoin balances, were showing a 0. And that caused a real scare across the markets and a bit of a sell-off. And as I say, 10% in 10 minutes. But you just wonder whether all this stuff is orchestrated, because that caused massive liquidation of a lot of longs in the market.
Like
so a lot of people leverage long. We got this 10-minute sell-off, 10% in 10 minutes. And all those leveraged longs, or an awful lot of them, massive amounts of them, were liquidated. So that put money into the hands of the market makers and the exchanges and so on. And then things just, it was just a bit of a glitch, it seems, that's fixed now.
Just a glitch. Coinbase is really known for this. I don't want to talk bad about them per se, but this is like something that always happens to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's they've got a massive. The assets are massive. I mean, a lot of the dealing through of the ETFs is through Coinbase. So there's massive liquidity goes through them. And so they'd be the one, if you want to manipulate anything to do with Bitcoin, that would be the one to the exchange to get involved with. I'm just going to touch on this again, just because I know I showed it yesterday, but it's really important to show where we are in the market if we've got time. But again, this is looking at unemployment rate. And again, basically unintuitively, or sort of, you would expect when unemployment is at rock bottom, you think that's going to be great for the economy, but it's actually when unemployment is rock bottom that we see recessions. All these gray areas are recessions. There's actually 12 recessions here shown over the past 70 odd years. 12 recessions. Every one of them started when unemployment was at a low, and a turning point on a low. So every single one, you can look at it, every time unemployment is at a low and then turning higher. And we saw that in the COVID crisis, unemployment was at a low. We got a massive bump up in unemployment because of COVID, but that was actually they settled that with printing a load of money and bailing us out short term, but obviously it's just plastering over the problems. But then we're now seeing once again, virtually all time, for a long time, unemployment lows. And so when that turns, we do expect another recession to come. So, it's not all roses out there. There's some issues. And again, just touching on this one, this is the worry that the interest rates are unlikely to fall as quickly or as soon as we expected. And so the March rate, in March 20th FOMC meeting, 90% of the market were expecting a fall in the rate in March. That was back in December. That was the expectation. 90% of people expected. But as time goes on, fewer and fewer people, and now only 3% of the market expect interest rates to fall at the March meeting. So it's not going to happen. There's not going to be any change in interest rates. So what everyone was hoping for and expecting, a fall in rates, and a fall in rates makes business more profitable. It means there's more money in the economy. People don't have to pay so much on their loans, etc., etc. So there's more money available. But if you don't lower interest rates, there's less money available. And that's not good for the economy. But there does seem to be fear in the market. And what appears to be happening is, just looping back to that very first slide, people are piling money in like there's no tomorrow into the Bitcoin ETFs. And that's where, so interestingly, this yesterday was the second biggest ever flow of money into any ETF, not just a Bitcoin ETF, but to any ETFs. Looking at the biggest flow yesterday, it was the second biggest ever, looking at all instruments, ETF instruments. So just shows there's massive euphoria growing around Bitcoin. But that is the area that, again, looping back, that we're in now, an extreme sort of euphoria, extreme greed in the market. And these are the times that we need to be cautious, not when the market's in the doldrums. So I think there are many, many lessons to be learned there that we can learn. And again, obviously, we've got the Learn How to Trade course with the discount code Trade Smart, and you can sign up at learnhowtotrade.club. But this will teach you some of these things. I touched on a little bit each day, but there's so much more to be found within the course that will help, again, empower you to know when to be buying, when to be selling, and how to trade in a more effective way. So I think that was interesting today. I think it's fascinating looking at fear and greed. What do you think, David, Bruce?
Big time, big time. It actually simplifies it amazingly if you just follow the greed and fear index.
Yeah, I mean, it is really something else. I just the massive amount of money, and then I don't know if you heard about it last night at some point. The Feds moved the Bitfinex hack coins, and I thought, well, I mean, gosh, it was like $500 million worth or something like that. I don't know, it was a lot. And man, the market's they just hardly even moved. I thought, well, that's gonna create a sell-off, but no, didn't. No,
I mean, you'd think
$1 billion.
You'd think so, but
yeah.
$500 million.
It was $1 billion.
Sorry,
it was $1 billion.
That was the net inflow. That was the net inflow to ETFs yesterday. So it soaked up just like that. Normally, yes, it would have a negative impact, and people were worrying about it for months. But the rate of flow of money into the Bitcoin ETFs right now, that was more than soaked up in one day.
Yeah, I know, but it's always one of those things. It's one thing to have those volumes. I mean, you and I know how those volumes work. It's one thing to have those volumes happening, and it's another thing to have that big sell order, $1 billion sell order at that price. You know what I mean? Because you have the market makers doing all the things that they do. But you're right, when you look at those net inflows into the ETFs, then that gives you more of a story on it.
Yeah, and again, I don't think many people. I mean, it's good just to keep track of, those figures. They're available on the internet.
All right, I'm going to bring that off of the. I'm going to bring that off. I want to talk a little bit about, what's going on. I just put out a post on my X account that reads. Soros-backed traffic court judge in Illinois who presides over minor traffic violations and misdemeanors, has removed Trump from the primary ballot. Isn't that ridiculous? Do you think that Supreme Court is going to buck the deep state and save America? I tell you this, guys. The fact that, and it's like one after the other, and Dom, who's a very popular guy on X, he says, it's like they keep using black women to go after him. It's you got Fannie Willis, you have Letitia up in New York, and you have now this woman in Illinois who is also. And he said, "Is it just me, or is there something to that?" And I don't know. Okay, but what I do know is that for us as a country to be in a situation where a traffic court judge in some state can take somebody off the ballot is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I think we can't really go forward as a country like this. I don't think that it's going to work. We really need to shake things up. We may be in a position now with Texas taking a lead on the border and the different countries coming in, where we can have a convention of the states. I don't know if that can happen or not, but basically, they said pending an appeal, he's going to stay on the ballot. He's going to stay on the ballot until at least Friday, is what this radical Soros-backed woman judge has said, and it's pending an appeal. It's pending an appeal to the Supreme Court. So now again, it's just this lawfare, okay, that's going on, and so now he has to again go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has, of course, today just said, and they did stall. I said that wasn't a good thing, really, that they stalled about it. But they stalled, but now they are going to take up and look at this case with Trump immunity, because that's the whole thing. And that's, if they say that Trump has immunity, then, I don't know. It's just a mess. It's a mess. Does the president have immunity from the things that he does while in office? I think that if they don't, then...
Yeah, they're going to have to rewind the clocks.
Well, yeah, of course. Obama did all kinds of stuff. Obama gave pallets. He flew pallets of cash over into Iran. That certainly wasn't legal. He did a lot of things. Congress didn't approve that. Now, of course, we understand how it's all working. The central bank approved it. Central bank said, hey, no problem. We'll front you the money. They collect their commission. He probably got a cut too. Of course he did. And so did everybody else that was involved. But do you think that the Supreme Court is going to save us, guys? And I know I talked about it at the top of the hour as well. But do you guys really think that the Supreme robes are going to save us? And then if you come to the realization that they're probably not going to save us, I think we're getting through to a lot of people. I'll tell you that, David. A lot of people are starting to realize a lot more of how the world works. Yeah. David and I have been around the world. We've been to a bunch of different countries together. As well, I live here in Washington for a long time. Friends in the last administration. And, you start to put together how everything works. And I'm getting old too, of course. And Dad always taught us how this stuff worked. Dad told us. Dad was like the original red pillar. He was like, he was a Ross Perot guy. Yeah. He was a Ron Paul guy. He was, he was back in the day. Lyndon LaRouche. You might even be too young for that one, David. David's still young. It's not like me.
Yeah, actually, I don't know that name.
Yeah, that was before. As I said it, I was like, "Yeah, I'm going way back." Lyndon LaRouche, he was a hot one there. So yeah, so I don't know, guys. And then what happens? I think everybody needs to have like, so what happens? And I also think that everybody needs, I don't hear the Q guys so much saying, don't worry, it's all part of the plan. I don't hear them saying that much anymore. If it was all a part of the plan, we wouldn't be where we are right now, going in to an election that may or may not happen. And even if it does happen, by all indications, there's going to be just millions and millions and millions of absentee. Now they call them mail-in ballots, but they're absentee ballots, basically. And we're still going to be on these magic electronic voting machines. So I feel like if they've agreed that they're going to let Trump win, he's going to win. And if not, then he won't. It may be that they've decided that he won't be able to get anything done anyway, and will be too much of a pain in the butt. I don't know. But I think relying on a bunch of old guys in robes to save us is pretty ridiculous, guys. And that's where we're at. Everybody's just kind of sitting there, holding their John, sitting there. Well, I hope the Supreme Court saves us. Supreme Court's the last line of defense. You got a mom in there.
Yeah. You need to get out there and tweet.
Tweet. Well, it's better than doing nothing. What we really need to do is everybody needs to come to Washington and peacefully protest. You have no representation here. You have no representation. Supreme Court doesn't represent you. Congress does not represent you, and the White House does not represent you. We have three sections of government. That's the way we set up our government, and none of them are representing you. And the central bank has taken total control. And there's very few of them, guys. We can. It's easy for us to take the country back. There doesn't need to be a shot fired. We don't need.
We are the people, and the government works for the people. Just need to put them back in their place.
The people. All we do is follow the Constitution.
Yeah, and your U.S. code and your amendments, and you are golden. Buy gold and silver at costmetals.club.
At costmetals.club. We are launching at costmetals.club. Well, David, thank you again for joining us. We have exciting Arbius will be joining us tomorrow. I'm really excited about that platform. AI, machine learning. They're using proof of work mining. It's going to be really cool. See you tomorrow.
Good deal. See you tomorrow.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.